This ESPN podcast is brought to you by Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Visit geico.com.
The BS Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects. The BS Report. The BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Welcome to the BS Report. Taping this on a Monday, right before Monday Night Raw and 6 days before WrestleMania. You were the guy who created WrestleMania, basically. Hulk Hogan. You were the marquee match, and I got to say, I was single, and I was 15 years old. And WrestleMania 1 was like one of the highlights of my life up until that point. You and Mr. T against Piper and Orton. Did you ever think it would get to the point where it was like WrestleMania, pay-per-views, all that stuff? Did you see that in your head when you came back?
Let me straighten you out a little bit. I was one of the guys that created it. There was another guy named Vince
Well,
McMahon.
but they created it for you.
That had a lot to do with it. Yeah, I was kind of like, I had found something. I'd found a crazy lightning bolt, this Hulkamania thing. And the timing with saying I was from Venice Beach, California, really from Florida. And the tan, and at the time I had a full head of blonde hair, and the All-American, just the whole training, the prayers and vitamins gimmick was something I believed in, even though, that was the gimmick. It wasn't the man at the time, but it made the man a better person. But as years went along, but I never dreamed that when we did WrestleMania 1 and we had everything on the line and Vince had leveraged everything he owned just to pull the event off, I never dreamed at the time that 31 years later it would be the premier sports entertainment event generating billions of dollars worldwide with a 24-hour network, and Hulk Hogan would be known in every single foreign country around the world, everywhere. It was just I never dreamed it would happen.
So I started watching wrestling, I'm going to say 79, 80, somewhere in there. And at some point, you showed up as a bad guy.
Yeah,
and you were there for about a year and a half, and you had the whole arc with, I think, Andre.
Yeah.
And but you never won the title, but you were the bad guy. But then all of a sudden, Rocky 3 happens.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my God, Hulk Hogan, he's in Rocky 3. This is amazing. And that was, I think, the best 10 minutes of any Rocky movie. The Thunder Lips thing.
I agree.
It was just an amazing 10 minutes. Like if you watch it, it still holds up 32 years later.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I did start out as a bad guy when I worked for Vince McMahon Sr. It was the WWWF, Worldwide Wrestling Federation, 3 Ws. And I lasted a couple of years, and I loved Vince Sr. God bless his soul. I was his guy. He kept me correct and kept me on track when I was younger and running around and getting this break of wrestling in Madison Square Garden. And then when I did the Rocky movie, Vince fired me. Vince Sr. fired me.
Oh, he fired you once you got the part?
Yeah, well, I told him I was going to do it, and he said, no, you're not. And then I said, yeah, because I watched Rocky 1 and 2, and I was like, oh, my God, if I could just push a broom in those movies.
Yeah.
And when I told him I was going to do it, he goes, no, you're not. And I didn't realize there was that much tension. But when I told him I was leaving, the mindset back in the day was if you're a wrestler, you're a wrestler. And you don't do TV and you don't do commercials. And if someone says wrestling's fake, you punch them out and knock them out. Or if they say, hey, that was a great show, you knock them out. No lawyers, no cell phones, no cameras, no lawsuits. It was a way, way, way barbaric mindset back in the day, such as the day I wanted to be a wrestler and I told the wrestlers, hey, I want to try this. They broke my leg the first day. So it's changed and evolved a lot over the years in the last 35 years.
But the funny thing is, it would have been the absolute best thing for the WWF for you to be in Rocky 3. The promotion from that, which I'm surprised Vince is so smart. I'm surprised he didn't see that.
Well, no. If you fast forward a couple of years, after the Rocky movie,
you came back,
I spent a lot of time in Japan.
Yeah,
because I love wrestling in Japan. And then if you fast forward 3 years, I was wrestling in Minnesota, and I had figured this Hulkamania thing out in Minnesota with AEW and Verne Gagne. So when I got a call from Vince McMahon, it was Vince McMahon's son, Vince, who runs the company now.
Yeah.
And he had a different vision. And he flew to Minnesota to talk to me where I was living, and we talked till 5 in the morning. He said, there's never been another guy like you that's had this type of momentum, that has this type of entertainment value and this type of appeal and charisma, and I want to take you and launch this new brand and this new vision. And Vince actually, in 1983, laid out to me that we're going to go worldwide. It's going to be a global juggernaut. It's going to be a phenomenon. And blah-blah. And I looked at him like, what's in your water? Give me some, But he had this vision laid out. And when I went back to work and Vince took over from his dad, that's when the transition happened.
So Rocky 2 had already happened at that point.
Rocky 3 had already happened.
Or Rocky 3, I'm sorry. Yeah,
Rocky 3 had already happened, but a lot of the stuff that Vince was doing as he moved along, Vince would just joke, and he would say, "Oh man, my dad would be rolling over in his grave if he knew we were bringing an actor into the ring like Mr. T or Karl Malone or somebody like that." So Vince had this vision, and now his father, I guarantee, is smiling and looking down on him and really happy, on how this greatness that Vince has achieved for all of us.
So when you went to, I was always fascinated when you went to Japan because you had a lot of success in the WWF for, a year or so, and then you disappeared. And it was like, where did Hulk Hogan go? And meanwhile, you're in Japan. The only way to even know what you're up to was they had those wrestling magazines that were once a month. And you'd be like, Hulk Hogan's feuding with this guy or that guy. Didn't you feud with Andre over there too?
Yeah. Well, what a lot of people didn't realize is the man that broke my leg the very first day was a guy named Hiro Matsuda.
Okay.
He was a big 6'4" Japanese guy that, was a very, very intense shooter and amateur wrestler, Hiro Matsuda. So he broke me in the business. And after he broke my leg, they thought they'd never see me again. And when I came back, I became like his favorite son because I was there helping him train people and do the dirty deeds back in the day. So the whole time when you saw me and I was a bad guy in 78, 79, 80, I was flying to Japan. Like if I had 2 days off, I'd blow to Japan and wrestle just one day.
Yeah.
Vince McMahon Sr. would let me go for 3, 4, sometimes 5 weeks on the tours there. And, they had Shin Nippon Pro Wrestling, New Japan over there. So I was always going to Japan all the time. And I was single at the time, so I had no one to answer to. So I just loved the business so much. I was always back and forth.
Right.
And that going to Japan full-time ended about 87, 88. After the WrestleMania 1 and WrestleMania 2 and WrestleMania 3 took off, it got so intense with the work schedule with Vince McMahon and the WWE, WWF back then, that I couldn't keep going. I was Hulkamania running wild, the champ, and it's just like every single building we went to every night was just crazy.
Yeah, I was going to high school in Connecticut back then when you were right there in Stamford. Mm-hmm. And I remember sometime in the middle of all that, it was at the Stamford Mall, and you were there. And it was this I think it was a 3-story mall.
Yeah, it was.
And word spread that you were there, and it was like just this herd of kids. Almost a little like Rocky 2 when Rocky's running through Philly and the kids start following him. So all of a sudden there's just this mass of kids just following. You're going to, I don't know, some sports store and then some other store, and people are just kind of like this. But that must have been what your life was like back then everywhere you went, right? I mean, I'm sure it still is now to some degree.
Yeah, you should have came to the LA airport with me last night. It was insane when I got to baggage claim. But
back then it wasn't, people weren't 24/7 celebrities like they are now. It's like we saw you on TV.
Yeah.
To see you outside of my television set or MSG was like, oh my God, there he is.
Right.
Well,
it's really actually more intense than ever now because of the social media, and WWE has a 24-hour network now that it kind of like gave me another lightning bolt to ride on. I mean, when I was the champion, there was only one vehicle, just TV.
Yeah.
But now
Saturdays,
these kids are going on YouTube and watching me slam the Giant. They're watching WrestleMania 1. They're going back and watching all my matches in Japan where I would really get down and wrestle the way they taught me to wrestle. There was no ear stuff and tearing the shirt. It was actually the heavy-duty wrestling in Japan, the way I was broken in. So people now, the kids now, that are like 5 and 6 years old go, "You're my favorite wrestler, and I don't even wrestle anymore." But it's really cool because I think it's much more intense than it ever has been because of all the different vehicles you can see me on.
It's funny you mention that because my 7-year-old son who loves wrestling, who's really the reason I'm going to do Raw tonight because it's going to be like one of the great moments of his life. He knows all your
matches. You're going to do Raw tonight because you're still a kid at heart.
Well, and that too. But he's going to be excited for it. But he's seen a lot of your matches.
Wow, that's cool.
And YouTube and WWE Network and how easy it is to surf around, he's been able to catch up on it. But I didn't know he was doing it because sometimes when you're a parent, you're like, hey, give the kid the iPad for an hour or whatever.
Yeah.
And he's in there. And so one time I wanted to show him the Andre match from WrestleMania 3. And he's like, oh, I know this one. He picks him up and I was like, you're 7. Like you were.
That's cool.
Like, how do you know this one? But it's so easy to catch up with all that stuff. And then the other thing is you can watch one. and there's 5 more right next to it.
Right.
You know, and it just kind of compounds itself. So when you came back, we have that tape actually. Your first appearance, I remember watching this, and nobody knew you were going to be on. It wasn't like now on the internet where they leak stuff and people know there's somebody might show up at whatever. Bob Backlund, who had just had the title, I think, for like, 5 years? And he had just lost it to the Sheik. He's doing a 1-on-2 match against the Samoans. Nobody knows you're backstage. And then... And this was your first comeback, right?
Right, it sure was.
When was the last time you saw this?
Oh, my gosh, dude. I haven't seen this for probably 30 years. This is insane.
People are going, there's one guy who just won't stop jumping up and down on the thing. It's like, people definitely, I feel like the crowds were crazier back then.
Yeah,
Don't you think?
You could tell I didn't have the gimmick figured out yet. Otherwise, I'd be tearing the shirt off, having that place going crazy.
No, there was no tearing off. And I think people were also confused because the last time you left, you were doing bad guy things.
Yeah.
But now you're a Rocky III guy.
Yeah, they're very forgiving.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can drop down your knees and repent and beg for forgiveness, and they will readily accept you back quickly.
All right, now you're going to come in because the Samoans have decided to turn on Bob Backlund.
Yeah, and those Samoan guys were my best friends.
Oh, were they? Were those good guys?
Yeah, they were. We lived off exit 42 in West Haven.
Yeah.
In the same apartment building. And yeah, I'd known these guys for a few years, and they were like my best buddies. Actually, the one guy, I don't know which one it was, I can't tell, but one of the guys in there, Sika, that's Roman Reigns' dad.
You're right.
Yeah.
I forgot that.
Yeah.
So,
guy on the far left, right there, around in the corner, that's Sika on the floor. Grabbing Backlund's foot, that's Sika.
Is he still around?
Oh, yeah, he'll be at WrestleMania.
It's amazing how many legacy kids there are with wrestling. Like, you think about, here's the promo you did. Do you remember you said you hadn't thought about tearing the shirt off? Backlund sells you, and then this was...
He's a great man. He's told me.
He basically passed the torch to you right here.
You know something? I would like to thank Mr. Bob Backlund and the WWF for bringing the Hulkster back. But like they said, this is a different Hulk Hogan.
I definitely didn't have the Hulk Hogan wrapped down yet.
Already
it's coming now.
Wild. Just check it out, man. It just turns me on, brother. Eugene, it just turns me on. And I'm going to the top of the ladder. And I thank each and every one of you for bringing the Hulkster back here, Daddy.
Huh.
So,
Daddy, a little southern drawl there.
When did you figure out the gimmick? How long did it take?
Well, I thought I had it figured out, but apparently not. I spent 3 years in Minnesota trying to figure out this Hulkamania thing.
But you said there you didn't feel like it was there.
Well, no,
yet.
not. I mean, tear it slow. Let me tell you something, brother. So I was talking like I was in Memphis, Tennessee there.
Yeah.
So it took a while to kind of like dial it in and fine tune it. It probably, I saw some matches after this, and it actually took me, after I won the championship from the Iron Sheik and really got in my groove, it took me about a year to really get it down to a science to where I could just hold the people in the palm of my hand,
Right.
It took a while to get there.
What was you got insane pops back then, but I find it hard to believe you didn't have a crazier crowd than when you won the title from the Sheik, which was really only like a 9-minute match, but it was like you come out, everybody's going nuts. And then it just stayed that way for 10 minutes. You won the title. Everybody goes even crazier. Was that the loudest crowd, or was there a louder one?
No. Oh, my gosh. The crowd that was really loud, but I couldn't judge it, was the Andre the Giant.
Because so many people.
Yeah, they were all, when they were going, Hogan, it was almost like a wave that was uncoordinated. With so many people, it was like, Hogan. You couldn't really, it was deafening in there, but the place where it was the loudest that I ever heard was WrestleMania 18 when I wrestled The Rock.
Oh, yeah. That was a great moment.
And he started punching me, and they started booing really loud. And then when I stuck my thumb in his eye and I started punching him back, the place exploded and went crazy cheering. So that was weird. That was a great sports moment. Yeah, that was a moment where the people made a statement that no promoter, no wrestler is going to tell us who to cheer or boo for. We've got a mind of our own. Right.
Yeah, I watched most of your matches that were on TV, because the other thing, when living in Connecticut, you could see the MSG cards every month.
Oh, that's right, the Garden Network, yeah.
So I watched you win the title live, and, some of those ones from the 80s, which I wish they would put more of them on the network. I think my favorite one ever that you weren't in was Slaughter and Sheik had like a boot camp match. And it ended with Slaughter just taking the Sheik's boot and just basically knocking him out. But the crowd, it was like kind of the height of that USA versus Sheik type stuff. But all of those matches were phenomenal. But I remember one of your best ones. I don't know if you remember this one. You did a tag team with Okerlund. It was somewhere weird. It was like Minneapolis. Yeah,
I remember it.
And it was like you were at your apex, and you had to carry him as I forget who you were wrestling. And you had your whole thing figured out at that point.
George Animal Steel and maybe Mr. Fuji.
Sounds right. And you basically Okerlund, and you pulled him in at the end, and but it was just like, there was like this 4-year run, but you were working 12 months a year, right? You have an off season?
No. I mean, we had years where we were flying 300 days a year. We had years where we wrestled 400 times a year. Twice on Saturday, twice on Sunday, twice on Wednesdays. I mean, I remember several times hitting the Philadelphia Spectrum at 1 o'clock and it being sold out. Then driving up to New York in the Garden being sold out the same night.
Right.
And then the very next day, I remember going to the Boston Gardens at 1 in the afternoon. It was sold out, and getting on a plane and flying to the L.A. Coliseum and wrestling in L.A. that night, and it was sold out. So I was hitting 2-a-days a lot back then.
And you're not flying first class or charters or any of that stuff back then, right? A lot of times coach, connecting.
It got better. The thing was, when you first saw me in 78, when I went up to work for Vince Sr., we drove everywhere. So if you were wrestling in Fall River, Mass., and you had to be in Chicago the next night, you drove. You get out of the ring and drive 12 or 14 hours all night long.
Yeah.
A couple Samoans in the car, 4 or 5 300-pound guys, and 1,000, 1,500 miles to drive, and you just got it done.
Right. I remember Hacksaw got arrested once with, I think, the Sheik.
Yeah.
They were feuding, but they were in the car together.
Yeah.
And it was like, all right, this is weird, but maybe he saw him on the road and had to give him a ride. Like, you're trying to justify, like, for whatever reason they were hanging out as buddies. But
that was a cardinal. Shouldn't have done that.
Who was your closest, like in the 80s? Who were your people? Who was your entourage? Who were you hanging with?
Oh man, I was. It's just like I had a friend named Brutus Beefcake that I grew up with.
The barber.
His sister went to high school with me. Brutus was a couple of years behind. So
that's why you always looked out for him.
Yeah. So whenever we'd leave for the beach on Saturday, Brutus was a younger guy. We'd say, hey, we're leaving at 10 in the morning. We'd leave at 8. We'd always leave him behind. Then he grew up and he got a little bit older and he was cool. We started working out. And I hung out with Brutus, and then Brutus went different ways. He wrestled in Portland and for Bill Watts in Oklahoma. But the guy in the 80s that I really spent most of my time with was Randy Savage.
Yeah.
And for some reason, him and I clicked. He lived probably 2 minutes away from my house in Clearwater. We did everything together. So we had 15, 16, maybe, I don't know, could have been 18. No, not 18. Probably 15 or 16 years were because of the WWE and our schedules. I mean, we were together constantly, and working out and riding motorcycles on boats and just jet skis whenever we were together. So I got to know Randy very well.
What was his normal voice like?
Just like this, brother Hogan, you got lust in your eyes for Elizabeth. Ooh, yeah.
Yeah.
Just like that, always. That was him.
We might have that Randy Savage clip, actually. I might have queued that one up. Can you show that one? Because this is one of my favorite wrestling moments of all time. And also, I think both of you guys, I think Savage at least. So this is, you guys were the Mega Powers and it fell apart.
You leave me out there. What is wrong with you? What is getting out your down, man? I know it's an accident. Listen, let me tell you something about Hulkamania. Let me tell you something about Hulkamania.
This is a good end one.
Macho Man, this is talking to you. You're wrong, man. You're wrong. No, you're way out of line. No, you're out of line. And let me tell you why you're out of line. You got jealous eyes right there.
Jealous eyes was great.
Jealous eyes, because you're a former champion. Hulkamania is just in the win. I was carrying you. I'm not number 3 in the Mega Powers. I'm number 1. You guys got me in the back.
That's a great
end. You're way out of line, man. Hold on, wait a minute. Hold on. No, just slow down, man. Hold on, slow down. Wait a minute. No, you're way out of line.
And you guys set this up for like 8 months.
You know why? You know why, Elizabeth? Because you can't beat me. You're wrong. No, you can't. Man, don't touch me. You can't beat beat me. No, you didn't come at me like a man. You're jealous because I'm the World Wrestling Federation champion now, and I'm going to be a long time from now.
My heart's pounding just like it did 25 years ago.
I'm going to tell you what you're wrong about more than anything else. No, I'm going to tell you what you're wrong about more than anything else. I can take anything, but I'm going to tell you something right now. Those eyes right there. Those eyes.
Jealous eyes.
You understand that? You got my face. You got lust for Elizabeth right there. And I'm going to tell you, it makes me sick. I can't even stand to look at you.
I don't think he was totally wrong the way some of the matches went.
Man, for a belt, I would beat you 1, 2, 3. That would be okay.
Try and talk some sense into this guy, man. Try and talk some sense to it.
Was this your first hospital match?
I don't know what happened from here. This is crazy.
So you haven't seen this in a while?
No, dude, I haven't seen any of this for a long time.
Oh, this is great. I'm so glad we have this. Uh-oh. Oh, no.
What are you doing now? What are you
Brutus! He came to save you. So,
Wow, that's strong.
some incredible Macho Man performance.
Yeah, he's unbelievable. The thing was, he was that intense in everything he did, whether it was working out or riding jet skis, or that was him, man. And that's what I dug about him, because, you know, and not just being the guy trying to make the money, but let's talk business first. You want to make some money with somebody, he's the guy.
Yeah.
Because he lived that gimmick. I mean, 24 hours a day. There was none of this stuff where, okay, I'm Doink the Clown during the day, then at night I'm Terry Bollea, and I'm, you know, Brutus Beefcake during the day, and then at night I'm Eddie Leslie, or during the day I carry a snake around, but then at night, you know, I don't. He was the Macho Man.
Yeah.
You know, 24 hours a day, and there were no holes in his boat, man. He drew nothing but money, and he in-ring performer. He was there. I mean, it's like saying, what can I depend on every single moment of the day? You know, that, you know, my heart's going to be pounding, I'm going to breathe air, and that Randy's going to be Randy. You didn't have to worry about it. Randy was going to be Randy, and he was intense.
And they had, I mean, this was a recurring storyline for you, right? During the mid-'80s, where you had the guy you were friends with, and he turned on you. Like, everyone, the Paul Orndorff angle was great.
Yeah.
He was, I think, the first one where you know, you were buddies.
The pile driver was a little snug, I'll say that much.
Oh, it was a little close?
Snug, yeah.
Uh-oh.
That was a close one.
Where somebody got jealous of you. They were buddies with you, but they started to resent you, and you didn't see it yet, but everyone else saw it, and it would lead to something.
But it was so pure, because it was so simple. You didn't have to go into weeks and weeks and weeks of painting some crooked line picture.
Yep.
I mean, it was just so easy, and it worked so well. And it all had to do with, and I don't mean this to sound pompous at all, but it takes two to tango, and when you have two guys that are over,
yeah,
you know, I could go in the ring and just point at you like Randy pointed at me, and the building would erupt.
Right.
I can go in the ring and point at a guy, and if nothing happens, I'm going, oh man, we're in for a long night. Or if I tell a wrestler, kick me when the bell rings, instead of locking up, and they kick me in the gut and get some heat, which means start beating on me. If I can hear that building rumble,
yeah,
we're going to tear this place down. If I tell somebody to kick me in the gut and start pounding on me, and it sounds like a funeral, we're in trouble.
So who are some of the best ones that you could just feel like together there would be the rumble? I'm sure Macho Man's one of them.
Piper.
Like who else?
Piper all day long.
Yeah.
Piper.
He drove people crazy.
He was good.
I think he was the best bad guy ever.
He was good.
He knew how to work the crowd.
I disagree. I think Hollywood Hogan was the best bad guy ever.
You're not a bad guy. You don't count.
Yeah, but I did some evil stuff.
I know you did.
If you look back at some of that NWO stuff, I was an evil man. I was evil. But no, Piper was great. Macho was great. Andre, always. Good guy, bad guy, always. He's just a draw. He's the giant. He's the real giant. You know, Andre was all day long money. Orndorff, made money with Orndorff. I'll tell you a guy that I did not think it was going to really click with, but it clicked better than almost anybody, was Kamala.
Really? The Ugandan giant?
Man,
wow.
People were scared to death of him. You know, Big Jim that owned the barbecue down in Missouri, they thought he was a real Ugandan headhunter. You know, it worked, man. It was great.
Wow. One thing with Macho Man, he took wrestling. I mean, Snuka started this, but you know, took it in the air basically.
Oh yeah.
And the '80s were such a cool kind of decade for the transition between. You watch some of those matches from the '60s and '70s, and it's like a 3-minute armbar.
Yeah.
You know, and like occasionally somebody might get thrown off the rope, and you might get a clothesline, but. I remember watching Snuka for the first time, and it was like seeing like Michael Jordan or something.
Wow.
We were like, oh my God, what? So you can go up there and you could do that, and then Macho Man extended it, and now all of a sudden you had all these different kind of styles, which was pretty neat. You mentioned Andre though. I've always been fascinated because nobody ever beat Andre. He was like the guy, they didn't need him to be the champ because he was a draw on his own. You could send him anywhere and be the main event. But he was also indestructible, but it was always one of those things where, oh, if Andre ever went for the title, we all know he'd win. And now everything's leading to WrestleMania 3. Nobody ever seen him get pinned. I've always been fascinated by this part of it. It doesn't seem like even you knew whether you were going to win the match or not, even as it was happening, right?
Andre was a little different.
Right.
You know, I had. Well, let me do the end of the story first. We became very, very, very good friends. Probably the last 8 years, 9 years, really close. Really, probably as close as I've ever been with anybody. Really good friends. But before that, we didn't hit it off, and I think it had a lot to do with me. And I don't want to say anything bad about Andre, but I think maybe he was kind of jealous because there were no big guys.
He had the
and
monopoly.
John Studd, he used to beat the dog poo out of John Studd. And all of a sudden, here comes this young, dumb, blonde-haired guy from Venice Beach, and I actually wanted to be as big as Andre. I was nuts, man. I thought, you know, I'll weigh 300, then I'll weigh 350, and then I'll be as big as Andre, and I'll be so big that if somebody beats me, it won't be believable. I was crazy. You know, I was such a huge wrestling fan growing up and just loved the business so much that I wanted to be, Andre was my hero.
Yeah.
But I think I came on so strong that he was looking at me like, I think his mindset was, I need to take this kid who loves the wrestling business and teach him a lesson.
You were on his corner.
What's that?
You were on his corner.
Well, no, I think he needed, I don't think it was mean spirited, but I think he needed to put me in my place. I'm just thinking like he would. And I think
so how did he do that? How did he put you in your place? I think
he needed to put me in my place, and if I really was who I said I was and I loved this business, I was going to have to prove it to him because late 70s, 80s, when I used to wrestle Andre, if I was pulling up the Philadelphia Spectrum, I'd pull my car over and I'd get sick, you know, before I'd pull up to the building. I was so nervous, you know, because I knew when I got in that ring, he was going to beat the crap out of me. I mean, you can say whatever you want about sports entertainment nowadays. Back then, when Andre didn't like me, he beat the crap out of me in the ring. And so I went through a bunch of that stuff with him for a lot of years. And even though I acted like I was happy and, hey, boss, how you doing? And I was excited to see, it wasn't fun. And then...
So the karate chops are really a karate chop.
And when he jumps up and sits on your chest, you know, and he's 600-700 pounds, depending on his health, you know.
Yeah.
He was never 500 pounds. He was never the 500-pound Andre the Giant. We weighed him at Detroit at the airport before WrestleMania 3. He was like 650-something, you know. So, I mean, it's kind of like...
650?
Yeah, he was big. I don't know if he was, you know, he just had back surgery and he was heavy. And his weight varied, you know. It'd be like you gaining 20 or 30 pounds. For Andre gaining 100. It's no big deal. But and then I think we went to Japan so many times together, and we were always in Japan together. And he saw me hustle in Japan. I think in Japan I finally earned his respect because I would go out there and we were the guy jeans, we were the Americans, and it was a different attitude back then. It wasn't, hey, man, you know, we're going to Japan, let's have fun, we're all friends. We went to Japan, it was like the Americans versus the Japanese. It was intense over there. And I think he saw me, you know, dig and scratch and claw for so many years that I think he went, okay, I'm going to finally lighten up on this guy. But there was definitely a transition, and I knew when it happened. You know, it was after an IWGP tour, International Grand Prix tour, where I wrestled Inoki. And I think after that match, things changed.
And physically, once we hit like 82, 83, 84, he started to break down a little bit year by year. Because you watch those late 70s clips of him, and he was like athletic. Like he's jumping up in the air and stuff. And I think you could maybe the weight or maybe...
Well, he was fast.
The business.
You know, he was a Golden Gloves boxer, #1.
Yeah.
And if you hit him and tried to run from him, he'd catch you. He was fast. So there was no getting away from him. And, you know, nobody could beat him. It's just the way it was.
How tall was he, do you think?
He started out around 7'4".
Oh, so he really was 7'4".
Yeah, when I first met him when I was a wrestling fan.
He was 7'4".
Yeah, I think back 1976 or 75 when I first met him as a fan.
Yeah.
He was around 7'4", and then I think because of his back and his weight and his age, I think, you know, he started slumping a little bit. So I think he's around 7'1".
But you had never pinned him before WrestleMania 3, had you?
No.
Nobody had pinned him?
No.
Never happened.
No.
It was too unrealistic even for wrestling.
Yeah, it wouldn't be believable.
So you go into WrestleMania 3, his body's breaking down, and they tell him, or they tell Andre, look, we want you to put Hulk over on this one. Can you do it? What's his reaction?
I don't know if the conversation went like that.
How do you think it went?
Well, I know Vince McMahon came to my hotel room the night before to talk to me about the match.
Yeah.
And asked me what I saw for the match. And I said, well, not knowing what's going to happen at the end, I think this is classic David versus Goliath, that I fight and fight and fight, and he keeps beating me down until there gets a spot where I get one up on him, and, I make this crazy Hulkamania comeback. So Vince listened to me. We talked, and he goes, I'm going to go over and talk to Andre. So, nervous wreck. And I knew Andre wasn't feeling great, because of the back surgery stuff. And the next day, of course, we had to get to the Silver Dome like at noon. Sit there all day long.
People, yeah.
And I kept asking Vince, because Vince kept saying, you're going to be okay. Things are going to be okay. And never really knew, because I went and sat in Andre's dressing room. And
you just never had so what happens if he kicks out? Then you just get DQ'd?
Then he's going to beat you however he wants to beat you. He beats you at any moment whenever he wants to.
Yeah.
What are you going to do about it?
Right.
So, I went to his dressing room. Oh, sit down, boss. So I sat with him. I could tell, he had a heavy heart. He was not feeling great, and we sat and we talked. And every time I'd say something to Andre, hey, Andre, how do you want to start the match out? Don't worry. Okay, brother. Then I'd sit and talk for a while. An hour ago, I'd say, hey, Andre, what do you think about maybe if you put the foot up and I duck it? Don't worry. And so got to the point, Andre, what do you think? Thumbs up, thumbs down? What do you think? Don't worry. I was like, oh, my God. So it was a different experience, because I've never been in that situation before.
Right.
But it was cool. He was so kind and so generous, and believe me, if he didn't want to get slammed, he wouldn't have gotten slammed.
We have that clip. Let's show it.
Look, you're horrible, man. You got everything.
Well, of course we're going to have this.
Yeah.
And he almost pinned you at the beginning of this match, we should mention.
Yeah.
It seemed like the ref almost did it. Or Wave 3. So you got 80,000 people right now going crazy.
Let me correct you. It was 94,000.
94,000 people. And now you have to pick him up, and you're saying he weighed 600 pounds.
Yeah, he was over.
Did you think you could do it?
I didn't know. I didn't get him the way I wanted to get him. There's picking him up here, and then there's the launch position up here. Right. I kind of got him here and turned him this way.
It's still amazing.
Yeah. See, I turned him there. Oh. I should have got him way up here.
Right.
But what happened was when I got him up to turn him.
Too much weight?
I tore my biceps, like here. See those? You can see it.
You tore your bicep when you picked him up?
You see these holes here?
Yeah.
See that hole?
Yeah.
And there's one over here. I tore my biceps picking him up. And it's just, nowadays you get cut and put in a sling for 6 months, but I split the next day and went to Japan for like 8 or 9 days and wrestled. But, it was just the way it was back then.
Have you ever said that you tore your biceps on that move?
Yeah.
I didn't know that one. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Don't you think Andre would be an unbelievable 2-hour documentary? I've always wanted to do a 30 for 30 on him. It seems like everybody has one awesome Andre story.
Yeah, it would be great, man. It would be great. I've spent a lot of time, and I get a lot of awesome Andre stories.
Everybody who ever crossed paths with Andre probably has 3 great stories about Andre, which is what you need in a documentary. You need people telling full stories, all that. So you got a little worn down, I'm guessing, from wrestling 400 times a year. Late 80s roll around. You start phasing back a little. You make a movie. Like, how long did you think you were going to be able to keep wrestling at that level?
Well, the whole Vince had a different mindset than his dad. The first movie I ever made, Vince funded. No Holds Barred. Yeah.
I might have seen it a couple times.
So actually, Vince and he came down to Florida, and I actually was living on Reddington Beach at the time, not Clearwater. And like a block down, there was a Hilton Hotel. So at the time, my wife, Linda, I said, Vince and I are going to go spend some time together doing some business. So we checked into a hotel room, and we spent 3 days. We wrote No Holds Barred in 3 days. We wrote the whole movie. And then we hired, him and I didn't know anything about Hollywood and movies at the time, so we hired a scriptwriter to clean it up, who not only did he clean it up, he took credit for writing the movie.
Ooh.
But Vince and I sat there and wrote this movie.
That's your first taste of how Hollywood actually works, yeah.
Yeah, and so once No Holds Barred played out, made it for practically a couple $1 million, and it generated a ton of money overseas, and we didn't have the DVD things back in the day. It was the VHS stuff, but it still played for a couple of weeks through in the theaters domestically, and then it did really well internationally, because of the wrestling that's piped in everywhere internationally, and that kind of led New Line Cinema to approach Vince McMahon and myself, and we did a couple other movies, Mr. Nanny and Suburban Commando with New Line Cinema. At the time, New Line Cinema was just starting.
Yeah, and it
and
became
those three movies kind of put New Line Cinema on the map. So then different things came along, TV series, Thunder in Paradise, and different movie parts and cameos. I don't know if I did 17 or 18 or 19, 20 different movies, cameos, Gremlins and Spy Hard and all these different movies I had little cameos in, and did a couple of movies for TNT, whatever they were, Navy SEAL movies, Assault on Devil's Island. So it was just always something.
And you were able to scale back on all the wrestling you were doing, I'm sure.
Yeah.
As you got older.
Yeah. Well, what I didn't realize was, like, towards the end of the 80s, and Vince and I never had a conversation, he pretty much in his mindset had got all the blood he could get out of the turnip. He thought that this whole Hulkamania thing was kind of like, winding down, which, there was about 7 or 8, 9 years of some, or actually more than that if you go back to the beginning with his dad, of this Hulk Hogan persona.
Yeah.
And it's not supposed to last for decades after decades after decades after decades. There's supposed to be a new decades of superstars come along and replace us. Well, in the 90s, that didn't happen. Vince and I.
You must have secretly enjoyed that. Because they did try to.
Yeah, I did.
They did try to.
I did. Okay, I did. I finally admit it. But the thing
they did bring a couple dudes out there. I mean, Ultimate Warrior was different than you, but was the same sort of runs and has a lot of energy.
Lex Luger was supposed to be the new Hulk Hogan.
That didn't work out.
No, but I don't know why I wasn't there. But Vince and I had.
I have some ideas.
No, I'm not touching that one.
All right, I won't touch it either.
But anyway, Vince and I decided to part ways, and then when I went to work for Ted Turner, I wanted to do the bad guy thing. I went in there as Hulk Hogan.
So that was a whole master plan.
No, not really. I went in there as the red and yellow Hulk Hogan to put Turner on the map, wrestling Flair, and Mr. T and Shaq there the first night I won the belt from Flair.
Yeah.
And then right about a year and a half into this thing, the tearing the shirt and the leg drop started getting old for the fans. And they started, not responding the way. So, I ended up turning into Hollywood Hulk Hogan, and it just rejuvenated my whole career. I was on fire again. I mean, just crazy. So then I got another 9 or 10 year stretch out of that thing, but.
Can we have that video? Can we see it? I was prepared for this part of the conversation.
Too much.
And then there was one.
Oh, yeah.
And it was Sting, and he didn't look too good.
All right, so here we go. So at this point.
Listen to what Heenan says.
Hogan is in the building. You damn right he is.
Go get him, Monster.
But whose side is he on?
So you think he sabotaged it a little bit? Well, because they knew there was a mystery third partner, right? But the crowd doesn't know.
Yeah, well, why would you throw that out there?
Hulk Hogan arrived.
Uh-oh.
What is he doing? God, is he the third man? He's the third man.
I think he's the third man since he just like
Think so?
his buddy. So one of the reasons so this is Bash on the Beach.
Yeah.
I may or may not have watched this live when it happened.
Are you kidding me?
The crowd got so angry they just started throwing stuff at you.
Yeah, they were throwing bottles and batteries.
Has that ever happened in a match you had before?
Not to that level. I've had people throw stuff at the bad guys, not me. And they'll hit the kids in the crowd or the referee or me instead of the guy they're throwing at. But this got really crazy.
So part of you must be thinking, this is great, this worked. And then the other part's thinking, I don't want to die.
Yeah, I knew that from this point on, leaving the building would mean getting attacked. They'd try to turn your car over when you're leaving the building. Like back in the day in the Garden when I left in 78, 79, the fans were nuts, you know. But
they got so mad at this. I was mad. I think I was like in my mid-20s and I was furious.
That's great.
It's like, how could he do this? All right, so how did your life change out of the ring after this happened? You'd been, you know, good guy, hero guy for 15 years. Now all of a sudden you have a painted black beard and you're doing bad guy things. So how did people receive that outside?
Well, it got really weird.
Yeah.
Because we were so cool. They cheered us. And it wasn't, I mean, they hated us at first, but then there was this cult following.
NWO.
That it was cool to be in the gray area. The lines got blurry between good and bad. And, you know, people like Sting were getting booed and Lex Luger was getting booed. And, you know, same thing happened when Hollywood Hulk Hogan went back to the WWE, you know, and I went in with the NWO. All of a sudden, the good guys that were there, established good guys, were getting booed when we came back.
Right.
So it was pretty crazy. The lines got real blurry for a while.
That's my favorite subplot in wrestling, when the bad guy becomes so much fun that actually the crowd kind of gravitates toward him, and even the crowd kind of turns evil. Because that happened for Piper too, and some people in the 80s.
Well, I don't know if you've really taken a good listen to WrestleMania 18, but watch that match with me and The Rock and actually listen what's going on with the crowd.
And it flips. I remember when it happened. I haven't seen it in a while though.
It was intense.
So they flipped on The Rock.
Big time.
That's like the best thing you could do as a wrestler, right?
But
you
was
could
cool.
turn the crowd.
But he was cool because he was in the ring with me. And, you know, old school, he's old school. He's third generation in his blood.
He knows.
And the bad guy always leads. The heel. I don't know what they do now, but now, back when I wrestled, the bad guy always led the match because it was up to you to keep the momentum and feel the crowd, you know, and it's an art form, you know, that you have to listen with your heart and your ears. So when things flipped, you know, I said, settle down, brother. Let me just slow this dance down a little bit. So once again, I reached up and gaffed him in the eye with the old thumb in the eyeball or whatever I did. I don't know. And I started chopping meat. And the more I chopped meat, the more they started cheering. I'm going, oh, shit. Oops.
No, you can swear on this. No, that's great.
I said, oh, man, this ain't working.
Yeah.
So we just kind of got it back to a back and forth thing. And we kind of were feeling out his fans and my fans. And finally we got it on track to where it was 50-50. Because it was just so one-sided for the first 5 or 6 minutes.
That sounds like this was your favorite match.
It's not my favorite match, but it's we're talking about people cheering the bad guy.
Yeah.
You know, I'm torn between that match and the one with Andre. The one with Andre is, if I had to say, what's the one match, if you could only have one match in your life, what would it be? It'd be Andre the Giant. There's no doubt in my life. If I could wrestle one match and never wrestle again, it'd be Andre.
So WrestleMania 18 is your favorite match where you didn't tear both of your biceps at the end of it.
Yeah. Yeah, the thing was, that WrestleMania 18, I was in there with 2 broken ribs, which was ridiculously stupid. You know?
Jeez. Because
I don't know if you know, at the end when I'm shaking Rock's hand, I'm holding my ribs, you know, really bad. And then when he rock bottomed me a couple times, I was holding my ribs. But I had a warm-up match because I hadn't been in the ring for a while.
Yeah.
And so I told Vince, you know, I need to wrestle a couple times before WrestleMania 18. So Vince booked me in Tampa, you know, 20 minutes from my house at the University of South Florida, the Sun Dome, and I was wrestling Rikishi.
Yeah.
And so I had Rikishi in the corner, you know, and was doing the Hollywood Hogan thing, beating him up a little bit. And I said, when I go to turnbuckle you, reverse it, I'll hit, and then charge me, squash me. So, you know, I was in the ring having fun. So when I went to throw him into the turnbuckle, he reversed. I hit the buckle, and now he's coming wide open to squash me. So when I hit the buckle, I kind of like forgot that I told him to squash me. I looked over at my kids, Nick and Brooke were in the front. I went, hey, guys, what's up? Thumbs up. And wham, I got whacked. And I wasn't like flexed.
Yeah.
And Rikishi whacked me. It wasn't his fault, but 2 of my ribs got a little crack. And, man, that hurts. And so 2 weeks before WrestleMania, I'm going, how am I going to get through this? How am I going to get through this? But you do.
Well, we'll do this again. I have more questions.
Okay.
You'll come back, right?
Yeah.
This was fun.
Yeah, I love sitting here.
We had clips. We talked about
That's
stuff.
awesome.
Yeah,
Plus, you know what you're talking about.
I had a lot more stuff to ask you, but
No, it's not like you just I jumped on the team yesterday. You actually know what you're talking about. You know more about this wrestling than most guys I talk to.
I do. I was there for the majority of your
That's awesome.
the first stint, and then I had an illegal cable box during the Monday Night Wars during all the pay-per-views. So I
Would
saw
you have the card, the illegal card? That went
a
with
guy
the
named Big Al got it for us.
Oh,
We paid him
really?
like $500. So I saw every WCW, WWF, and ECW pay-per-view from like 95 through 00.
Now for
The Monday Night Wars were great.
$9.99, brother.
I know.
You can see them all again.
Well, do people understand that they could just get the channel, the WWE Network, and it's the cost of 2 pay-per-views? I don't mean to sound like I work for WWE because I don't, but I don't know if people understand the math.
I think they're starting to figure it out.
Like, don't pay for 12 pay-per-views. Just get the channel.
Yeah.
It's not rocket science.
It's
All right,
good-
please
it's
come
good.
back.
Thank you, brother.
This was fun.
We'll be with you tonight.
Yeah. I will see you tonight.
Okay.
Hopefully,
And good luck.
Hopefully, by the time people don't hear this, JBL won't have clotheslined me through the
And
Spanish announcers table.
Be careful out there,
Be careful out there.
because sometimes
Yeah.
when you least expect it, someone can come flying across the table or
Yeah.
go through the table.
Oh, yeah.
So just don't get too comfortable out there. I mean, you need to get comfortable and get in your zone, but please have an extra set of eyes on, because you never know. It gets crazy out there, and you know that.
We were in row 1 for SummerSlam, right in front of the Spanish announcers table, and I was with my son. And they were like, is he okay to be, that's the Spanish announcers table. And I was kind of preparing him like, yeah, for whatever reason, it's a magnet. People just love going through the Spanish announcers table. He's like, why? What? I was like, I don't know. I'm not. But it was like the one match in wrestling history where nobody went through the Spanish announcers table. I think he's still disappointed. So that was it. I'm going to answer a trivia question.
That's crazy.
I was there the one time. Hulk Hogan, please
Thank you,
come
brother.
back. Thanks for everything.
Thank you.
Back in the BS Report with more later this week. Thank you.
So I get to sign off. Whoa!
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at Podcenter at ESPNRadio.com.
Peace out.
Geico presents Strange Savings Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.